I've been sharing Larry Kwong's story to school kids for 18 years. It's a classic hero journey, the kid from nowhere, the longest shot who breaks every barrier to do the impossible, causes a shift in society. It's inspirational stuff. That's what this book is, and that's not the talk we're doing today. This is going to be about how affirming Asian Canadian histories can be challenging. So my interest in Larry Kwong goes back over 40 years to a conversation with my grandpa. He told us about his hockey hero, but left out the part about why Larry mattered so much. That's my grandpa with my dad in Vancouver, the year Larry made the NHL. Larry was a beacon of hope in some pretty dark times. China's exclusion was not something my grandpa wanted to trouble us with. When I went looking for Larry's story in the 1980s, it was nowhere to be found in any hockey book or magazine. Apparently, he had been lost to history. I didn't pick up Larry's trail for about 20 years. When I finally got to meet this mystery man in 2008 and hear him tell his own story, I was blown away. That's when I became obsessed with trying to get him some recognition in his lifetime. He was 85. We started a Hall of Fame at my elementary school in Larry's hometown of Vernon and inducted him. Nominated him for the BC Hockey Hall of Fame, Okanagan Sports Hall of Fame, BC Sports Hall of Fame, Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame. Media outlets like CBC, Global, and Sportsnet have been receptive to Larry's story, but there's been resistance out there too. The hardest conversations have been in hockey circles, with the hockey establishment. Speaking of hockey bosses, Larry told me about a tough negotiation he had with the New York Rangers brass back in 1946. Back then, players had no agents or union. Superstars were only making middle-class wages. Gordie Howe was making $5,000, which is about $91,000 today. There were only 6 NHL teams, and management knew that players would take pretty much any deal to live their NHL dream. So Larry walked in to the executive office and was confronted by the Rangers' inner circle, power players chomping on cigars, feet up on the desk, like a scene out of a film noir. Okay, that would be intimidating enough for most. But imagine going in as a person devalued and unwanted by your society, accustomed to rejection, without citizenship rights, with extremely limited prospects. This was the Chinese Exclusion Act era. Chinese Canadians were still barred from voting and practicing professions. Larry was trying to break the color barrier in professional sports, which was still segregated. This was before Jackie Robinson had made it into Major League Baseball. Larry had been denied jobs at Vernon Packing House and a Trail Smelter because of no Chinese policies. But going into contract talks with the Rangers, Larry knew he had some bargaining power. Beforehand, the 2 Ranger goalies had told him, don't sign up so fast. They want you because you're Chinese. First, the Rangers offered Larry $100 to sign an A form, which would have made him the sole property of the corporation. Larry politely declined, explaining that he didn't know whether he'd like the U.S. Hockey bosses weren't used to hearing no from a player. They wanted Larry to start with their minor league team, the New York Rovers, and lowballed him with an offer of $70 a week. Larry didn't give in. He talked them up to $100 a week, plus a $300 signing bonus. The Rangers publicist, Stan Saplin, told manager Frank Boucher to sign Larry whether he can play hockey or not. Saplin knew that Larry would be a great drawing card in New York, and he wasn't wrong. Saplin coined a new nickname for Larry, and King Kwong was a smash hit in the Big Apple. Attendance at Rovers games at Madison Square Garden skyrocketed from 2,500 to over 15,000, breaking records. Larry is the hero of increasing hordes of proud Chinese who swarm into the gardens each week, reported one New York paper, evoking yellow paranoia. Larry immediately showed that he could play hockey. He shot to stardom at a time when Asian representation in pop culture meant yellow face, farcical accents, and harmful stereotypes. Suddenly, Chinese Americans had a real action hero of their own to get behind. November 17th, 1946 was declared Larry Kwong Day at Madison Square Garden. In a pregame ceremony, the folk hero was presented with the key to New York's Chinatown. And Larry understood the assignment. Breaking through in pro hockey could break the ice for others as well. Larry explained to a journalist, "It would help to make our Chinese people better known and more capable of being successful in lines of business other than the laundry and restaurant. I have the greatest appreciation and admiration for the Chinese who follow these trades or professions, but I maintain that some of us can start out in fields not yet touched by Chinese people." That's what my grandpa and so many others were cheering for too. So, Larry was filling the Rangers' coffers. The understanding was that if he performed well, he'd get a promotion to the big club. Larry's electrifying play sparked rumors in the press that he'd be soon called up to the Rangers. For 2 seasons, he waited for his turn. Despite being the team's leading scorer and MVP, Larry had to watch as player after player got called up to the NHL ahead of him. Finally, on March 13, 1948, Larry got the call of his dreams. He had more than earned his chance, but what he got in a New York Rangers sweater was a cruel stunt. His 1 minute on the ice at the end of the game was not a real opportunity to prove himself. More than 60 years after that night in Montreal, Larry shared his deep disappointment with me. "I'm still not happy. It's a very ticklish time with me to play that short amount of time." After the game, Larry was sent back down to the farm team. He was their cash cow. 20 of Larry's Rover teammates got better chances in the NHL. Convinced that the Rangers weren't going to let him play, Larry signed in the offseason with a rival team in the Quebec League. Larry wasn't giving up on his big dream, as the Quebec League was a major pipeline for NHL talent. He dominated in that league, proving himself against all-time greats like Jean Beliveau and Jacques Plante, and taking MVP honors and winning championships. But no other NHL team even offered him a tryout. One witness to Larry Kwong's greatness was Stan Fischler, known as the hockey maven, who covered the Rangers in print and on TV for over 60 years. I watched Larry star for the New York Rangers farm team, the New York Rovers, for 2 years. He was super. He got the rawest of all raw deals from the Blue Shirts. Only one shift to the Forum. End of debut. End of NHL career. A total unforgivable disgrace. Larry lived for 70 years after his NHL debut. He made history. He proved that a person of Chinese descent could get to the top. That was an important milestone, and he never heard from the NHL again. In 1994, Larry was in his early 70s, running a grocery business in Calgary, when the NHL Diversity Task Force was created. When the Hockey is for Everyone program was launched, 4 years later, Larry was retired and available. Willie O'Ree, the NHL's first black player, was named the diversity ambassador. For decades, he's helped promote and grow the game across North America. He's been called hockey's Jackie Robinson. He was credited with breaking hockey's color barrier, even though he broke in 10 years after Larry. Indigenous players who preceded them both weren't mentioned. That was the NHL's narrative, and Larry didn't fit. Larry was never invited to participate. Even though he had been a great ambassador and builder of hockey as a player-coach in Europe in the 1950s and 60s, Larry would have done an incredible job for NHL diversity, but he was excluded again. Because of his role with the NHL, Willie O'Ree has won every conceivable award, and he deserves them all. He's got the Order of Canada, Congressional Gold Medal, Hockey Hall of Fame. He has an NHL award and an arena named after him. The NHL team he played for, 45 games for, the Boston Bruins, retired his jersey number a few years ago. I first wrote to NHL Diversity on Larry's behalf in 2008. Got no reply. At that time, just ahead of the 60th anniversary of Larry's NHL game, I also wrote to the Rangers. No reply either. Without contacting Larry, even for a quick quote, they did put out a feel-good story on their website. You had to be a subscriber to the Blue Shirt Bulletin magazine, though, to get the real story. Rangers PR director, John Halligan, came clean about the cruel stunt in Montreal. The Rangers got what they wanted. They got noticed. But from a publicity standpoint, this was strictly a quickie. The NHL did not touch Larry's story until 2021, 3 years after he passed away at 94. They produced a short video for Asian Heritage Month and put me in touch with the Rangers ahead of Larry's 75th NHL anniversary. The Ranger reps and I had extensive discussions, all cordial, via email and Zoom. I asked about the possibility of an Asian Heritage Night. The NBA Knicks, also part of the MSG Corporation, had been hosting such nights for years. Apparently, MSG has calculated that its hockey base wouldn't be into it. I mean, it worked for them 80 years ago on Larry Kwong Night, but somehow the Rangers are less interested now in reaching out to the city's 628,000 plus Chinese Americans, or 1.5 million citizens of Asian descent. Almost feels like they don't see us. Okay. What came out of those talks, though, was another story on the Rangers website at the end of Asian Heritage Month 2023. Despite the typo, the BC Historical Federation? No. The article does give a fuller picture of Larry's career and impact. Things went quiet after that. They suggested that they'd look for opportunities to do more to recognize Larry and amplify his story, and include him in their centennial celebrations in 2025-26. We'll let you know, they said. In March 2024, I was surprised to see an Instagram post from the parent of a kid who was playing Larry in an upcoming documentary short from the MSG network. Like, what? I emailed the Rangers to offer my assistance and the family's involvement. We were told that we could see it before it aired, but would have no approval rights. All they wanted from the family was a couple of images and a signed release. A month later, we got to see the video. They'd hired an Emmy Award-winning director. The production was super slick with live action and animation, and it was riddled with errors. Moreover, it was a piece of revisionist history, like self-congratulatory propaganda from the Rangers claiming that they were ahead of the times to put an Asian in a game, and blaming federal laws and society in general for his minute NHL career. Unfortunately, society wasn't ready, was their line. Never mind that Jackie Robinson was flourishing in baseball at the same time. Larry's daughter, Christina, Larry's daughter and Christina and I felt sick. 80 years later, MSG was using Larry all over again. It took all my diplomatic experience as an elementary school teacher to navigate these conversations. I didn't want to burn the bridge, but they still saw me as a nuisance. Society wasn't ready. It was the NHL that wasn't ready for Larry. It was their decision to exclude him. They crushed his dream. And I get it. It's not surprising that the corporate reps couldn't go there. Just disappointing after all this time. They explained, this is quote, "We also feel it would be difficult for us to single out the NHL for its unfortunate history, rather than talk about it as a societal thing. We hope this works for you and Christina." Christina wrote back that she felt she had a duty to protect her dad's legacy. She told them that she wasn't entirely comfortable with the message that the video was sending, and was hoping that the information could be accurate and represent Larry and his story in its truest form. "We're happy to work with MSG to assist," she wrote. They gave no reply to that. They did let me correct facts and keep massaging the language, but they moved ahead knowing that we didn't fully approve. They needed to get it in before Asian Heritage Month was over. Truth was an inconvenience for them. The piece aired on the MSG network, which we can't get in Canada. We asked for a link, and a few weeks later we're told that it would soon be shared on YouTube. They made us wait almost 6 months to see the final cut. In 2 years, it still hasn't been on any of their social media, even though it was nominated for a New York Emmy Award. It's almost like they're trying to bury the story again. Is it unrealistic to think that multi-billion-dollar enterprises like the NHL and MSG would ever admit to wrongdoing? Probably. In Larry's case, though, that admission would help to quiet the dismissive Minuteman jokes that he had to put up with and that persist online. He only got a minute, who cares? But why can't we talk about the injustice of his only getting a minute? No, the league is still not quite ready to face its history. Lately, when the NHL mentions Larry at all, it feels disingenuous. Larry is one of the first players of Asian descent in the NHL? Like one of the first, really? And just one slide? 1 minute? Larry deserves better than that. At least he's out of the shadows. Getting him the recognition and the visibility he deserves will be harder without more help from the NHL, but Larry is always up for a challenge. In their year of centennial celebrations, the Rangers didn't highlight Larry at all. That wasn't an oversight. That was a deliberate choice. But one of the most surprising and encouraging things to happen this year came out of South Dakota, of all places. Larry's book was selected for a statewide student reading program. In a state with one of the lowest Asian populations at less than 2%, a state that went 63 to 34 for Trump, kids in grade 4 and 5 voted the lone Canadian book on the list the winner. And what that suggests is Larry's story and Asian Canadian histories are for everyone. And that's a hopeful thought to end on. So thank you.